Hey everyone, Livy here, back with another video. Back under, back by the door. Let me tell you guys, before I even start with this, my part of California is wild right now. It's basically turned into, I don't know how to say this. It's basically turned into Seattle, Washington. We have not had real sunlight in months now, and it's just been torrential raining, which is very unusual for my part of California. I mean, we've always had rain in the winter. We just get a lot of rain. But we've had a very unusual thing happen where we literally had actual snow on the hills. Actual snow. My part of California does not get snow normally. So that's how you know we've had a very weird winter. But anyways, I want to preface that because, you know, you're going to see some weird lighting today. And it is what it is. But today, I'm going to do a very... Okay, it's old. It's an old hashtag, but I've been wanting to do this one for forever. It is 22 faves. So basically you pick your favorite majors, and you share why with everyone. And I've been wanting to do this tag for a while, but I kind of wanted to wait until I had more decks in my collection that I knew I could like sort through. But even that whole process, my goodness. I don't know who here has also done this tag, but oh my god. The process of figuring them out was a lot. It was a lot. So, this is my stack. Pretty thick stack. Most of these only have one choice of my favorite major arcana. But I'm not going to lie, some of them have two because I couldn't decide. And only Death has three, and I'm going to explain why. But let's get right into it. What are my favorites, right? What are my favorite major arcana cards out of all the decks I own? Granted, I only own, I'm pretty sure it's around 40 now. I own about 40 decks, I think. I'm pretty sure. It's not 50. Definitely not 50 yet. It probably will be by the end of the year. But, or 50 tarot, I should say, because technically with Oracle, I would have... yeah, in that 40 range. But anyways, that's not important. What's important is talking about my favorite major arcanas. And I'm going to start with the Fool. And I have two of them. See, this is what I mean. Wow. Why? Oh, let me fix my camera. Sorry. Let's talk about this. Why are these my two favorite Fools out of any other Fool? Well, most of the time we see the Fool as somebody who, you know, is about to fall off a cliff. That's a very typical one. Or they look happy, the sun is shining, everything is great. That's okay, that's cool. But the way I see the Fool is in these two cards. Myself, personally. The first, of course, is this Fool. This Fool has got to be one of my favorites ever. When I first saw this card, this is what made me fall in love with the Prisma Visions card, was I saw this card and I was obsessed. You still see the dog. The dog's in the water and the dog is looking at the pelican at night. But the reason why I think this card as the Fool has always entranced me is that this feels like the start of a journey. You're at this waypost in the middle of the ocean and you don't know where it's going to go from there. You're in some otherworldly realm and you're like, what's going to happen to me? Right? And for that reason, I think that is the Fool, right? It's the start of the journey. And yeah, and it also, interestingly, I like this Fool because it harkens back to the moon, where anything is possible and you just don't know what, you know? And for that reason, I really like this Fool. And this Fool, this is definitely also one of my favorite Fools ever, because I love that it's like this child who looks like they don't know what the hell is going on. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's definitely the full energy, you know? It's why, what is going on? I don't know what's going on. I have slight regrets. I'm just a baby. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to me, you know? And for that reason, I like this fool. Because sometimes it's just youth. Sometimes it's just inexperience. It's not necessarily someone being a dummy, you know? And for that reason, this is probably one of my favorite fools ever. It's just a different take. I think I'm going to shove these as I talk about them. I'm just going to shove them slowly to the side so you'll see like the baby on the side. But let's get into the Magician. Interestingly enough, I thought I would have a lot more magicians that I really loved. There was one from the Monsoon Tarot I really liked too. But I have to say, Gandalf. Gandalf was my favorite magician. Gandalf. I mean, if you guys know anything about Lord of the Rings, this should be an obvious one. Like, Gandalf is the master of everything. He knows the elements. He knows how to manipulate things. He's confident and he knows who he is and he knows what he needs to do. This is my idea of the magician. It's not to say that Gandalf has never made mistakes. He's thought about many of them. You know what I mean? But he knows that in his power, he can do anything. And he even evolves, right? Like, this is just the beginning of what we see of Gandalf. And he goes on to do so much more. That's why I thought, wow, this is the magician in my eyes. It's not to say that you'll never make mistakes and never be anything else. It's just, you know, you have the power and you can do this. And, and this is from the Lord of the Rings Tarot, of course, from Inside Editions. And this is my favorite magician. After I was looking at all of them, I was like, yes, this is what I think about when I think of the magician. So, Gandalf. You know, next up is the High Priestess. I don't know why I always think it's Empress first. And I have two, again. I have two because I couldn't decide between both of these. This High Priestess is from the Raven's Prophecy, so shock and awe, right? That would have favorites for my favorite deck. What I've always loved about this High Priestess and what I always think about is that this is the idea of the High Priestess. It is this otherworldly being that to me honestly doesn't have a shape. It controls all things. It is being in the darkness while reflecting back and being in the light. It's this otherworldly plane where like this figure barely even has like a body, you know, it has a hand that's holding the mirror, but it's something else. It's just so different and cosmic. And this is what I think about the High Priestess. It's an otherworldly being. That's hard to put into words. And so this one has always been one of my favorites when I think about the High Priestess, just straight up. And with that, I guess, is this High Priestess from the Teeny Tiny Tarot. It's simple, but I love it because it gives off that same otherworldly energy. Like, what in the world is hidden behind this curtain of pomegranates, you know? It could be anything. You could get, like, some otherworldly being behind there that's going to spit out prophecies and other things. I don't know why. It just always amuses me, especially because you can see, like, the little eyeball. There's, like, little eyes in there. And the little hand. I don't know. It's just funny, but it gives off that vibe for me instead of being like necessarily tied to a person. I don't know why that is for me, but anyways. Let me see. So those, wow, I'm going through these quicker than I thought I would. That's good at least. So I have the Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, and Empress. I was surprised that this ended up being my favorite. There's an Empress from this deck that's also my fave because it's literally just nature. And that is my embodiment of the Empress personally. But this Empress from the Monsoon Tarot is something else entirely. This hat, like when I was looking at all of them, there was some other good choices. But this is my favorite Empress because it's very, you know what's interesting about this Empress is she's wild. She literally sprang from the earth. She is Mother Earth. But at the same time, this also gives me very much Aphrodite vibes, you know? The Empress is part of the earth and is the earth. And look, there's like literally volcanoes and stuff going on back there, like erupting. And she was created from all that, you know? She's tender with her disciples, but she is also, you know, so powerful, like, you know, like looking at that face, like as soon as things go wrong, this Empress could destroy everything. Its power. And that's more of what I see as the Empress. I know some people are like, oh, so, you know, like nurturing. And I do see the Empress as the nurturer. But it's also just the power of things, like knowing that you could unleash so much. For that reason, the Monsoon Tarot's Empress is my fave. So good. And interestingly, my favorite emperor actually comes from the Yonasa Yao 7th edition. There was another emperor that almost took the place of this one from the Tarot Divine because it was King Arthur, and that's kind of what I see as the emperor. But the reason why I love this emperor so much is because this gives off the same vibes, but in a different way. I look at this emperor, and for some reason, I do kind of see King Arthur, even though it's not, because King Arthur's sword gets shown when he dies. It gets shoved back into the lake, right? From whence it came, Excalibur. But at the same time, I don't know. It's the idea that this emperor stayed here and died and is still presiding over the world and nature, and it's strong and sturdy and has so much of a story to tell. That this has to be one of my faves just ever. I don't know. This vibe is just the emperor to me. It's so weird, but I love it. Where am I going with this? Oh, the Hierophant. Now, I know the Hierophant, even given its name, it's very, you know, even if you harken back to Marseille, what little I'm learning about it is, you know, it used to be the Pope. But for me, the Hierophant is always somebody who is more of a mentor, a teacher. The masses come to the Hierophant and they are ready to teach the world. And look at the third eye is even open up there. This Hierophant is from the Paulina Tarot. And yeah, this one's my fave. There was a couple, you know, a good runner-up to this also would have been from a deck I don't own anymore, but I got rid of. What was it? Brit's Third Eye Tarot has a Hierophant that's literally just like praying, and it has like a cube over its head. It's like stuck. It's a square, you know, it's stuck in traditional mindset. That one would have been a good runner-up too. But I don't own that deck anymore. This Hierophant is the other one that I kind of think of. It's the teacher. It's somebody who is there to be the mentor also for the masses. And that's why I like this Hierophant the best. It's not necessarily religious, but it gives the same traditional vibes and respect and, you know, everything. I really like this one. Next, let me see. Let me double check. No, okay, it's the only one. Okay, for some reason, this is from the Shadowscapes Tarot. For some reason, this ended up being my favorite lovers, and I don't know why. I mean, because the thing with the lovers, obviously, is that there are a lot of decks where there's two lovers, you know, they're embracing or they're not embracing, or they're standing next to each other, or the original Rider-Waite-Smith, they're like naked standing beside each other with the whole angel thing. For some reason, I vibe the most with these two. They just give off the vibe. For me, I don't know. I think it's very fantasy-like, which is maybe why I like it. The fact that they actually are kissing. And I think I don't know. I think it's just because these two remind me of like characters I tried to write once in a story. Maybe that's why I like it so much. But what's interesting about these lovers too is like, not only are they are making the choice, right, to choose each other. It's like maybe even this figure is like giving up the crown to be with her. But there is still, as you guys can see, there's still the snake offering up the apple. The choice either to indulge, and the fairy like trying to give it. It's like either a choice to indulge those other parts or to embrace each other. You know? It's got a lot more detail than one would have thought. And that's why I really liked this lovers. I don't know. Yeah, they always get me. I don't know why. Next up. Now, by the time that this video comes out, you guys will already have seen my video about my favorite Chariot cards. And you know what's interesting? There was a couple of those other Chariots I thought could have been my favorite of the fave. And in the end, I did go with the Prisma Visions Chariot. And I think it's just because I was able to tie so much of an analogy that I understood. You know, the idea, I've already talked about this, I waxed on about in that video, but basically trying to drive in the rain, the pouring rain, when your headlights are showing, but it's so dim and everything else is chaotic, that's kind of the Chariot energy. It's like chugging along even though you don't know what's going on in the world outside. I think that's why this ended up being my favorite of the favorites. And then, let me just double check here. Yes, this is now there's so many good strength cards too. But my favorite strength comes from the Spacious Tarot. And it is this one. Because it doesn't, again, I'm noticing that a lot of my favorites are not, some are harken back to traditional, but a lot of my favorites ended up being ones that showed the traditional meanings in clever ways without having to have the usual busyness of, you know, the tradition, you know, like a clone imagery. So for me, the reason why this is my favorite strength card is because of the fact that, yes, in a harsh environment like a desert, you can still have cactuses thriving and blossoming in places that barely get water, barely get enough sustenance. They are patient and they have persevered through it all. That is a strength card for me. It's just so simple and beautiful the way it's depicted, but it says so much about what it takes to have strength and to be the strength card. It's not necessarily being the strongest and taming necessarily the beast. It could just be thriving in places where you normally should not have. That is the power to me. And why I love this one the most. Now, what's hard is when it comes to the Hermit, I couldn't pick just one. Hermit's one of my favorite cards. But these two Hermits by far are, I don't know, they hit this visceral part of what I think the Hermit is. The first one is again from, if I didn't say earlier, that other Fool was from the Guided Hand Tarot. Also, Monsoon Tarot. These are my two favorite hermits. Just ever. This one, I talked about it kind of when I first saw this in the guided hand unboxing, is I felt such a visceral connection to this hermit when I've been, when I first saw it, actually, when I've seen it online, this hermit is everything to me. I was this hermit as a kid. I was the one who hid in my room. Not necessarily records, obviously. I grew up, my childhood was the late 90s, early 2000s, right? So for me, I wasn't a record player, it was a CD player. But I was like this hermit sitting in my own little room, in my room, listening to music, fading, like trying to hide away from the world. And so I related to this so much. I don't know. It struck a deep chord in me, and that's why it has to be one of my favorite hermits ever. But this hermit is also one of my favorites because this is the other vibe of the hermit. This was me also, right? Like growing up, I hid with my books. I read even when the world around me was burning or terrible, It's having to hide away and make these choices to better yourself and to be your own light when there's so much darkness and other things that are trying to creep in. So for that reason, this has to be one of my favorite hermits ever. It says it so clearly why you have to light your own path and to hide away from the world. It's because it's literally on fire and sometimes, and everything sucks, It can be that way. And that's why these two are my favorite hermits. But then, we still have a lot more to go. Wow, this is going to be a very long video, I have a feeling. I could not also pick, I guess because it is also a favorite, I could not pick just one wheel either. And you know what the interesting about the wheel is that a lot of times it gets the shaft. It has like the ugliest artwork ever for it. Like people don't really care about the wheel that much. So a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people don't. But I do. And then my two favorites come from first the Raven's Prophecy again, and this one, which is the Wonderworld Tarot. These are my two favorite wheels for what they both represent of what I think of the wheel, right? The first one, this is always what harkens back to my mind. When I think of the Wheel of Fortune, it's this wheel. It's showing you the passage of time, the cycles of nature and the world and what you will have to go through, right? Is everything changes with time, ups and downs, and it'll repeat and repeat and repeat forever and ever. This is why it's one of my favorites, even though it's not a typical wheel, right? And this wheel also kind of gives me that same energy in a different way. I love this Wheel of Fortune, even just looking at Alice's face here, right, is showing that sometimes you can have extreme chaos with the wheel. You don't know what's happening. Sometimes it's fireworks and great, amazing things. And sometimes you're being thrown down the rabbit hole, unsure of what's going to happen to you, It's ups and it's downs and it's cycles that are going to keep going and going with life because that is life, right? Not everything can be sunshine and rainbows and roses. Sometimes it's growing too small or growing too big, with Alice. And for that reason, I don't know. This, it was just perfect for me. These two. But then, let's see. Yes, I only have one Justice card. And it's interesting that this one ended up being my favorite. I didn't think it would be, but when I saw all the other ones like spread out, this was like the one I kind of kept gravitating to. This is the Justice card from the White Newman. I love this Justice for some reason. I love that they're so powerful. I love that it's a quiet power, though. Their eyes are closed and they've had to balance the scales many times. They've had to give the justice so many times. They understand the phrase of what goes around comes around. And they also seem like somebody who, knows that for the things that they've done, one day someone will come to give them the justice. It's just the way of the face. I don't know. It felt like the right justice, the one who understands that it's not about just being harsh. It's sometimes having to do difficult things, even though you don't want to, So I don't know. This justice just felt like it knew, I guess. It knew what that took, I guess. I don't know. I'm a lot of philosophizing here. Next up, I only have one Hangman. I thought I would have more. But once again, the Lord of the Rings Tarot gave the perfect Hangman. Obviously, this is Gollum, or what some would also know as Smeagol. He's the darker side of the Hangman, but I really liked seeing him depicted as the Hangman, because Smeagol is somebody who once was a good river folk, and because of the power of the ring, he was transformed into something else entirely. He sacrificed a good life for his desires, the thing that he wanted, and it tragically altered him forever, right? Until his ultimate demise. And it's interesting because sometimes to get that knowledge and that power, the Hangman's not always a good sacrifice, right? Which is why I thought this was such an interesting Hangman. I don't see always the Hangman necessarily in that darker way. I always see the Hangman as Odin, right? On the world tree, upside down, purposely doing that to gain knowledge. But I don't see any decks depicting Odin, even though that is the ultimate Hangman. And so for that reason, this is a pretty good one, even though it's very dark in its understanding of it. And then we get to Death. The one that I also like Death as a card, but I had three cards for this. I couldn't decide because they all depicted it so well. Death. I see Death in a few ways. The first is from, once again, the Shadowscapes Tarot. I love this Death because the Phoenix is the ultimate death card portrayal in my mind. It is something that lives for quite a while. It's fiery, it's passionate, and then it will die and turn into ash, and a baby Phoenix will rise from those ashes. That is the Death card. It's a cycle of transformation and dying and rebirth. And it's a beautiful Phoenix in this one. So it had to be one of my faves. And this one also shows that same cycle. This is from the Northern Animal Tarot, the 3rd edition. This is one of my favorite deaths because it also depicts that. I mean, kind of in a gruesome way. And sorry for those who don't like bugs. Like this one, it's like, yeah, like the dead possum. But from its death has sprung new life and has nourished others, right? It is rebirth also. It is a transformation. They have lived on in a different way, a different chapter. You might have gone this way, but you have been reborn as a flower. So I really liked this death, even though it's kind of gruesome for, what it is. And I like the death card from Nicoletta Ciccoli. I have the mini. Because this shows Snow White and the dwarves, right? I love this idea of death because Snow White does basically have to go through a death moment to be saved eventually with a kiss that restarts her life, gets rid of her evil stepmother and all of that, or mom, or maybe it was just her mom. I don't remember. But I really like this death card too because it shows all that, you know. You can, if you know anything about Snow White, then it's like, oh, okay, yes, that is death. And it just makes a lot of sense, you know. Next up, oh, I have 2 for this one. I did not expect to have 2 for this one, but I did. This is Temperance. I liked both of these Temperances, and I don't know. I'll explain this one first. This is, again, from the Spacious Tarot. The reason why I like this Temperance, instead of showing somebody who's trying to, like, pour water from one cup to another, the reason why I like this Temperance is because it is depicting the balance still in a different way. The hot and your cold, and both of them meeting in the middle to make steam, you know? One is not going to prevail over the other. Neither of them will, right? There's a middle ground, and that is balance. That is the 2 elements. And for that reason, I really like this Temperance. But I also, for some reason, found myself drawn to the Temperance of the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. This is the mini. I really like the Swan as the Temperance because they still have the 2 cups, right? But maybe it's showing that they were balancing everything, but they wanted to finally take a rest, even though the shore is battering them. They've been through a lot. But sometimes, even when things are tough, you got to take a moment for yourself to balance yourself out. And I like that it showed that in such a beautiful way. I don't know, for some reason, this struck a chord in me. So I really like that Temperance. Yeah, I don't know. This is going to be one of my longer videos. Sorry, guys. Buckle up. Devil. Once again from the Lord of the Rings Tarot, but this is the last... Wait, no. I'm a liar. Never mind. I was going to say this is the last card that ended up being one of my favorites from the deck, but that's a lie. I realize I have another one. The Devil. My goodness. Sauron is the ultimate devil. Like 100%. The Devil. It is about temptation and about giving in to your dark desires that has sprung up an orc army. The ring, creating the ring, the ultimate object of temptation that is right there. This is the devil. Literally, this is the devil. It is giving into those vices in such a forward-thinking way. I don't know. I really vibed with the fact that it was Sauron. Made sense to me. Perfect devil, unfortunately. I only have 1 tower for this one. There is actually a lot of good tower cards in a lot of my decks. But the one from the Guided Hand is still the most relevant to me. It's a depiction of a forest fire and the whole world burning down. That is still such a powerful tower for me. Because, as we know, of forest fires, that even though they come to ruin, destroy everything, there is new life that springs up after a forest fire. Sometimes they are necessary. And for that reason, this is my favorite tower. And my favorite star comes from Tarot of the Divine. I don't know what it is about this star. I mean, I've looked up the story. It has a very interesting story about what this is depicting. But I think the reason why this strikes the chord, even without the meaning of the star, or like even without the background of like what's going on in the scene, is her face. It's the star is about hope. It's about, even though in the darkest moments you find a way to find beauty and everything in life, you know, like a better time. And she depicts it so well in this. That's not just all happiness and good vibes, you know. It's so beautiful too. Had to be my favorite star. I have two. Oops, I almost showed a different card too. I have two moons. See, I lied. This is why I said I lied. I realized this wasn't. These two moons do it for me. Again, Lord of the Rings Tarot. This one is from the Dream Vision Tarot. The reason why this is my favorite moon is because you need to know what this moon is about, right? This is a scene that takes place not only in the books, but also takes place, of course, in the movie. This moon is the light of, or this pool basically shows you everything that can come to pass and everything that is yet to happen and all the possibilities and anxieties and anything you could ever imagine is inside of here and could be shown to you. And that is my idea of the moon. It's everything. This is so smart. Like, I don't know who was coming up with this, but this is the moon. All wrapped up in a card. This is it. You know, like, it's everything. It is everything all at once. It could show you good things, but it can show you equally very terrible things. And that's probably why I like this moon the most too. It's not a full moon. I've never seen the moon as a full moon, personally. I see the moon as very much darkness. It is the moon when it's a crescent or it's a new moon where everything is darkness. Everything can happen. You can stumble and stumble and stumble in the dark and you will never, find necessarily what you need sometimes, or it can heighten your anxiety. And for me, that's for some reason what the moon card brings. I know some people really like the moon and revel in it, but I've always seen it more as like this kind of depiction when it comes to tarot, at least. So for that reason, this is also one of my favorite moons. Now, I'm coming up on the end here. I swear, guys. Oh my God. The sun. Once again, from the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. This is my favorite sun because it's not showing a baby riding on a horse through a field of sunflowers. And it's also showing something that I think depicts the sun. This sun, the first time I saw the sun was such a visceral gut reaction to, well, I'm not going to get into it, but my last name, a lot of me, has to do with roses, right? It's this little bird flying through hardship, dark clouds. It's literally raining, but the sun is coming out to shine through. Even in those darkest moments, you can find some happiness, some joy, some perseverance. This is the sun for me. It is conquering over basically this energy, right? And that's why I like this so much. I don't know. It's not like all sunshines and rainbows. It's trying to get that sunlight even when things are not so great, So I love the sun. Always going to love that sun. And we finally have now come to the last two. Interestingly enough, I thought it would be a different one. But my favorite judgment card comes actually from the Tempest Tarot. I don't like that it's not completely colored, but I love what it is depicting. And this is judgment to me also. Your judgment day comes when you have to face up to your crimes. Even amongst pirates, sometimes you can mess up. Sometimes you will be thrown overboard for doing something, and your peers are watching you as well. The pirate life, this judgment, I don't know. It makes 100% sense to me, and I really liked it. This ended up being my favorite judgment out of all my decks. And finally, this video is so long, Jesus. Finally, my favorite world ended up being this one. Once again, from the Teeny Tiny Tarot. This world is so fantastic, and it's so simple, but so effective. It still shows the ring. It still shows traditional meaning. It even shows a bird, a dove. But the world for me is coming home. It is ending your journey. It is finally opening the door to something new, something hopeful, something complete. One cycle, one chapter of your life is ending, and you can shut it and move on to something else. It is a door. It is so simple, but so effective. And that's why I liked this world compared to any other. And wow, I felt that like I got really philosophical in this video too, and it ended up being really, really long. But if you've watched my 22 faves this long, thank you so much. I hope you guys, if you haven't done this tag already, you should do this tag. Hashtag. I don't think it's an actual tag, but 22 faves, a good one. And yeah, I finally did it. I should tell you, I am going to do other ones. There's a core card one that actually does have a tag. I need to tag somebody for that one. And then some other ones I'm going to do surrounding this process. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching if you have. And I will see you all again next time. Bye.